Okay, well, let's begin. Welcome everyone to our executives, thought leadership forum, driving talent, innovation, and the future of work with Talent Alpha and Novartis. First, the ESA team, Cindy, Anna, and I want to thank you for joining us for our first 2022 Thought Leader Forum centered around the future of work. We are so excited to have Prez and Kristina today, and I will introduce them momentarily. We want to also just thank you for your willingness to pivot to a new Zoom link. As you know, we are transitioning to a new platform, and we want to make sure the experience is fantastic. So with a few technical difficulties, we decided to move to a regular Zoom platform. We may do this for a couple of others that are coming out of the gate quickly. But we'll get this figured out, and we so appreciate your patience. We're excited about our new platform, the event link that we have sent to you, and please save where we can showcase what's coming up this month in February and beyond as we build that out. So just exciting to see new features and capabilities. So more to come, and we're also really excited that this month, by the end of the month, we should be showcasing our new website. So stay tuned for that. Let me go to the next slide real quick. Hopefully this works. There we go. So as I turn my attention to Talent Alpha, I do want to note that while our time today will focus on thought leadership, the future of work, research Prez has done, I don't know why that moved, and embracing and seeing Novartis embracing a lot of that research. Talent Alpha does have a solution that we will showcase on January 25th through the Work Tech Startup Advisor meeting. So we would love for you to be part of that, and you can certainly register through our event page. Okay, so quickly, I want to introduce certainly Prez as well as Kristina. Prez is the CEO and founder of Talent Alpha. Talent Alpha is an HR tech platform which is transforming the way organizations can measure, manage, and access and share their tech talent. Prez has almost 20 years of experience as an executive in IT services in the IT services industry, and was previously the global marketing VP at Luxoft. With him today is Kristina Hardy. Let me just step back a little bit. They're both giving us an international presence here. Prez is in Poland, and Kristina Hardy is sitting in Germany, Berlin specifically. So thank you so much for being part of this today. But Kristina is with Novartis. Obviously we all know, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. I love her title, Disruptor, X-Team. I have to read a sentence from her bio, which there's so much good information, but practitioner of the HR arts, explorer of new ideas and places, and a rebel at heart. Gotta love it. Novartis is a client of Talent Alpha. Novartis has been embracing the open market for talent and experiencing what Talent Alpha has called out in the A3 work revolution, A3 being anytime, any place, and anywhere. So we will learn how Novartis has really, for the lack of better words, institutionalized these practices and trends. So we just, as we always do, want this to be interactive as possible. So feel free to use chat if you have questions. We're going to be monitoring that. Come off mute. We just want this to be a real learning experience for everyone, and hopefully we can all engage and learn. So with that, I will stop sharing. Sorry for the back and forth on the slides, and I will turn it over to Talent Alpha. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And it's our privilege to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm joining you from Krakow, Poland, and Kristina is in Berlin, Germany. I hope this will be an interesting and interactive session. There is data that we are looking to share with you, as well as some stories that we've encountered on our joint journey as Talent Alpha has been exploring on how we can bring innovation into the future of workspace. I hope you can see my screen by now, because what I wanted really to start with is to share with you some data from the research that we have recently conducted. So Talent Alpha, we've been always trying to be kind of on the forefront of where the marketplace, where the trends related to the way we work and we collaborate are evolving and how they are evolving. So every year for the past 3 years, we've been publishing a report called the Future of Work Report, where every year we are trying to find a kind of a macro theme that we believe summarizes, what happened in a given year and what we believe is ahead of us. So I encourage you to visit our website if you would like to download and read that publication. It's not only Talent Alpha that shares our opinion in this. We are inviting a number of partners to help us in this endeavor. So we have analyst firms that are sharing their data and their opinions. We have executives from very large companies doing that. We have academics, for example, from Harvard Business School, who are also throwing their opinion into that. I highly encourage you to check this out. But what I wanted to do over the next couple of minutes is to give you some of the highlights of what the data tells us, that the future of work immediate, now in 2022 holds for us. But also share with you a case study that we did with Novartis, and that's where Kristina will join. We will talk about that case study a bit, and then Kristina will take it forward with explaining how Novartis goes about innovation when it comes to HR. So without further ado, let me dive in. So the main theme of the of this year's report is anytime, any place, anywhere, right? We kind of stole that concept from the fairly old Martini ad, but we believe that this really nicely encapsulates on what has happened throughout COVID to the labor market. So and we see it day to day in our business. COVID really kind of broke all of the boundaries that especially the IT market has been experiencing prior to the pandemic. So whereas in our industry, the IT services, it used to be that companies were looking for talent in the 30-mile radius from their offices, we now see that those boundaries not dropped, not only kind of on the country level basis, but internationally, globally. It's not uncommon to see in our industry to see companies, for example, from Silicon Valley or Los Angeles recruiting directly on the local labor markets here in Central and Eastern Europe, posting jobs in Krakow, Warsaw, Katowice in Poland, or in Ukraine. We see also the trend going the other way around, where we see some of the engineers in the labor market changing their locations on LinkedIn, kind of pretending that they are based out of Chicago and New York, hoping that they will be hired for those remote jobs that are now available to them. What is really interesting is that whereas before that geographical barrier was actually a showstopper in the recruitment process, it no longer is for many companies out there. Both the companies and the talent are now ready to work in very flexible time models. So again, it's not uncommon for people placed in other parts of the world to work in weird times of the day just so they can meet the counterparts in the other zones. But also there is quite a lot of asynchronous work going on. Connected to that, and this is where we see a big shift in the market, is what we call the Anyplace, but it's more means any form, where the way companies engage with the talent really begins to evolve. It used to be we had full-time employees, we had outsourced employees, we had contractors. Right now, the models are getting really stretched, and many companies that we work with as a business are now looking into their strategies into the total talent, meaning how they can bring and build a very flexible total talent pool across all of these pockets of talent, how they can bring additional sources of talent using different models. And this is where Talent Alpha come into play. I'll show you a bit what we do in a minute. And last but not least, and this is, I think we all experience this, is the anywhere aspect of how it's changed, right? We no longer commute to the office. We are enjoying the hybrid world. I think Kristina, hopefully she will tell her story, how she worked remotely throughout the pandemic, that the work can be conducted from anywhere. And this is ambiguous for the employer at all, and it works, right? I think we have proven that the anytime, any place, and any work works. We no longer have to convince anyone that this is really happening. But all of these changes really had a big impact on the business. So the shortage of talent, and especially the IT talent, is skyrocketing. Some of the data that we have analyzed shows that between 2019 and 2025, the tech talent gap is going to grow 17-fold. There's actually there's some data from Microsoft where they claim that by 2025 there will be 160 million unfilled digital jobs in the global labor market. So we are going to experience a market where we'll have huge demand, over demand, and a limited supply, right? And what we already can see is the way in which this market is trying to find equilibrium by actually, first of all, a lot of fluctuations, so the terms such as great resignation or great reshuffle appeared in the end of 2021. But also we see how this is driving the salary inflations across the board, right? In our geographies, it's not uncommon to see 10-15% increases in salaries. I'll share some of the data with you in the next slide. But if you look at the data on this particular chart, right, everyone is hiring tech talent. Here's just 2 examples from the global companies, but on the regional basis where we operate and we run our business in 42 countries as of today, there is a lot of demand for tech talent, and majority of the executives that we spoke, they consider this to be a key barrier to their further growth. Plus, the kind of the organic talent traffic, meaning the applicants who are active candidates on the market, is also dropping, and many companies are facing this trouble. The tech talent gap is growing, as I already mentioned. When we surveyed the small and medium-sized businesses that we work with, nearly 80% of them said that they are experiencing either temporary or significant issues when it comes to tapping into the tech talent pool. And remember, we only work with IT services companies in our platform. When we ask them how big is that gap, like whether how much would they need to grow in the ideal world, you can see in the top right-hand side of this chart that these numbers are actually quite significant, anywhere from 10 to 30 to 50%, right? So the appetite for growth on the market is huge. Everyone and their mother are hiring tech talent. The tech talent is now way more flexible. They know these opportunities are out there, which is also then driving the salary inflation, which is point number 4 in this particular chart, right? When we ask them by how much they are looking to raise the salaries of the IT staff that they have on board, just so they can continue to be competitive from the local labor market perspective, you can see that even though some of the countries where we are operating have pretty significant CPI inflation, the salary inflation is exceeding it by a factor of 2 or 3. So the market is super hot. We also ask them how they deal with the incoming business. Again, many companies that we work with, they are actually services companies. So many of them said, we actually have, we need to postpone. We need to tell clients that they will not be able to get the job done, or we are using other parties in our ecosystem to try to close these gaps, such as involving staffing agencies or using freelance platforms, or using Talent Alpha, which is a B2B platform that connects them with other market participants. So what we are in a nutshell experiencing is a boom for open talent. These connections, these networks, and how companies are getting access to the talent pool are becoming more fluid, are becoming way more automated, giving you an opportunity to actually solve some of the immediate pains that you might feel within your organization. So HBS published some data where they surveyed the business leaders, where 90% of them claimed that they do believe that talent platforms, which is a fairly established by now category of the HR tech market, are an important part of their competitive advantage and their strategy. We see very large enterprises, and Novartis here is also driving the way forward, building strategies and programs around unlocking the open talent, or the human cloud, some other calls it. Just a sheer amount of companies who enter this space, our competitors, is also growing like crazy. So between 2009 and 2019, that market has quadrupled when it comes to the amount of players. So there is a lot going on. I assume most of you feel it on your daily basis, but there is hope, and the hope is in trying to adopt and consider some of the new solutions, and also driving the innovation within your businesses, which is where we will move next. So very briefly on Talent Alpha and what we do. We are effectively a two-sided marketplace, a B2B2B talent platform. When on one side, we are connecting large companies that need to access technical talent, and we connect you with small and medium-sized companies that provide these services at scale. So as of today, our ecosystem consists of over 700 companies in 42 countries, as I already mentioned, but gives you access to a talent pool of over 35,000 tech specialists, where you can tap not only into individuals, like in most of the talent platforms, but you can also tap into entire teams or get the entire projects outsourced. Basically, when you feel like you have a gap in your IT or digital talent strategy, we are there to help you out. And that's enough of the product placement. That we move to the meat of what we really wanted to discuss, which is how some of the emerging technologies such as AI, machine learning, or big data can help you in addressing some of the challenges that you might be facing within your business. And there's been research and proven that adopting some of these technologies, and we'll share with you on what we did together with Novartis in our pilot project. It brings time savings. It gives you additional data insights that allows you to make smarter and better decisions, but also gives you some predictive capabilities to see how the talent strategy will evolve going forward. So a bit over a year ago, we met our friends from Novartis NBSX division, where we were asked to join them in a project to help them to reinvent recruitment process for one of the delivery centers of Novartis in India. And we decided to use the technology stack that Talent Alpha has been developing over the past 3 years to help to address that challenge, to find really those dream candidates and applying some of the technology that we have developed in that course of that time. So the approach we've taken, we agreed with the team that in order to know whether the solution that we are taking and offering works out, we need to understand what is the entry point. So we said, why don't we start with actually mapping your existing talent pools? So in this particular role, so you can really understand what makes up a good performer in that role. We have a technology that we call the talent genome, and we have a number of tools that allow us to really quickly map the capabilities, both tech and soft skills of these individuals, to really draw a fairly detailed map of the organization. And using this data, we then could have conversations with hiring managers of these for this particular role to define what we call the dream candidate. Think about a dream candidate as the job description on steroids, right? Whereas instead of having 10 to 15 keywords that you typically copy and paste from the previous time you were recruiting for the job, you have a very detailed data model. In our case, it was more than 50 data points where we defined the required technical skills, but also supplementary tech skills. But also we included also some of the soft skills that we were expecting these individuals to have. So we knew who we were looking for. And then we applied the toolkit that Talent Alpha is developing to capture that data from the candidates, so we could let the algorithms to calculate the shortlist. So as part of the exercise, and this is what we do for some of our clients, we apply our technology to map the organization. The way this works is that the employee needs to spend anywhere between 10 to 40 minutes going through various numbers of tools we have developed within the tool that really allow us to decode that talent genome, building a very detailed understanding of capabilities that they have, the level to which they mastered it, but also we compensate it with soft skills metrics such as Big Five personality, or the creative behaviors that allow us to understand whether one is more of a creative or a heuristic thinker. And having that data, that's where a true conversation starts, right? We can sit down with the hiring managers and have a conversation with them on what are those skills that actually make a top performer, right? Like, how do we make sure that the next person we bring into the organization actually is not copycat or a lookalike from many other individuals we have within that team, but actually someone who brings diversity into that team. Not only diversity of the tech skills, but because they are fairly standard, often depending on the technology stack the company has, but more importantly from the soft skill side perspective, right? It's been proven that a diverse team is a way more efficient team, and that mapping technology allows these customers actually to see, first of all, where they are when it comes to their organization at this point in time. This is what you can see in this part of the dashboard, and allows us to have a conversation on how do we define the dream candidate. So this is where the workshop part happens, right? That's where we applied the toolkit of Talent Alpha, working with those hiring managers to help us build kind of this reference point that the dream person should have, right? Again, making sure that there is a fair amount of diversity of soft skill in the equation. Then the next step of the exercise assumed capturing the data from candidates. And here, we applied some of the features that we've developed within the platform. In this particular example, you see a feature we call instant onboarding, where it's actually AI and machine learning determining what questions we should ask the candidates, so we can kind of scratch that surface of the talent genome just enough so we can start mapping them to a potential role or a job within the organization. The way this works is that the algorithm actually predicts on what part of our job taxonomy and skill taxonomy and capability taxonomy we should explore, so we can offer the candidate the right job, which is what you will see in the next screen. But then the magic really happened once we took all of that data, and that's where we are getting personally very excited about what the future of work holds. And we loaded all of that data we collected into an AI and machine learning model. What you see in this animation, each dot represents here a profile. And it is a profile of one of the individuals that the company already had on board. It can be the candidate that the company has in the pipeline, but it might be the on-demand talent that comes from other companies in our broader ecosystem. What is happening here, the algorithm is analyzing those thousands of data points collected for all of these individuals, trying to find the proximity across all of the dimensions that are being captured to that dream candidate. So you can see that as it zooms in, it really shows you which profiles within that big cloud of profiles is in the closest proximity to the dream candidate. In other words, we are letting the algorithm to calculate the shortlist. So this is only our pilot attempt to really prove whether this approach of first understanding the landscape to having a data-driven conversation with the hiring managers, then applying some of the latest tech to capture the data and analyze it, yields the value. And here is where I think I would ask Kristina to jump in and share some of your feedback from that study.
Thanks, Przemek. Can you hear me?
Just yes, we can hear you.
Mic's on. Great. Hi, everybody. Really pleased to be here to talk about the experiment that we did with Talent Alpha, and also to answer any questions. So I can only say, I mean, your presentation is incredibly thorough, and I got excited all over again when I saw the kind of the talent mapping, because it's such a powerful way to look at the workforce. And I think the only dimension I would probably add here is, not only can this help in a discrete hiring process, but obviously you can expand it to kind of workforce planning, right? As well, because this is such a powerful way to see the spread of skills, capabilities, and experiences that talent within or even without the organization, so that entire universe, and think about, organizations can also use that information to think about where's the skill development going, what are our needs as an organization, what can we look forward to in the future, and how do we plan for that, right? Because that's the other challenge, right? Not only filling the sort of the vacancies we have today and that we project to have through the end of 2022, but also extending that to the future. That's where I think this is such a powerful experience and tool in particular. So the particular problem we were solving together was in Hyderabad, building the data science talent for Novartis, and there actually what we faced was a wonderful problem to have, but still a challenge, which is an overabundance of talent especially in the major metropolitan areas. So how to parse through those literally thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of candidates who throw their hat in the ring for a certain job and for certain roles. And so this process, this experiment really gave us a chance to winnow down, orders of magnitude more quickly than we would have through a kind of traditional selection process.
So you've mentioned one of the keywords, I think, that was guiding us through that, which is the experiment. So can you tell us a bit on how Novartis goes about driving innovation within the company?
Sure. Well, and I'd preface it by saying we're experimenting as an organization, and by no means do we think we've got the sort of the perfect model, but we are trying, and we have been trying through this innovation hub that is called the X Team, the Novartis X Team. I'll say a little bit more about it in a moment, but yeah, but we're in our third year of life at this point, and the challenge of talent acquisition was the first challenge that we picked up when we started working together in 2020. So yeah, and there are obviously so many opportunities, right? As we all face both the challenge of managing workforce and workforce planning and parsing through the universe of talent, and all the things that you mentioned, Przemek, about the way that boundaries are now changing and becoming more permeable and just extending around the globe, right? So yeah, I can say more about how the team went about it in a few minutes, or how we operate. But,
so,
or would you like me to do that?
Yeah,
now?
please go ahead. I think I covered the use case. I think it would be worthwhile to really understand how you guys operate.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, X was founded in 2020, and it was really the brainchild of the global head of Novartis's business services organization. So the core business functions, IT, real estate and facilities, HR, or P&O as we call it, people and organization, procurement, finance, those core functions, and a couple of his lieutenants. And they basically wanted to create a team that would work on driving exponential innovation for the core business services functions. So while obviously we're a scientific organization at heart, and so there's a lot of innovation going on around in other divisions, especially in the scientific or the clinical functions, but within global business services, lots of opportunity to do more than incremental change. And so a small, very, very small, so the GBS in Novartis at that time, the Global Business Services Organization, was about 10,000 people. So Robert Veltevreden, our global business head, decided to start this innovation hub, and we started with about 25 people in the model. So a drop in the bucket comparatively, but very interesting, especially in two aspects. One, the internal business model, which is a sponsorship model. So we had basically the core functions of the Global Business Services division fund positions, and basically fund 2 positions per division. There are seven functions within the divisions, and we hired into 2 internal roles, disruptors, that's what I am, and creators. Disruptors were actually representatives or subject matter experts, if you will, basically long in the tooth practitioners of those core functions. So 7 of us came together to fill those roles, and then 7 people were chosen. Actually, we chose our colleagues through a hackathon event, and we brought those people from elsewhere inside the organization, but from a variety of functions and other divisions, in fact, and we called those folks creators. And together we represented the internal sort of Novartis team. The third role was actually staffed from outside of Novartis. So we invited 7 vendor partners, our key vendor partners, to contribute to this gathering as well. And they, in fact, seconded 7 of their best people to work together as kind of a triad, in a triad model, but then we cross reference as well, to drive these kind of moonshot projects. We work in a really rapid development cycle. So normally our cycle is about 6 months. It extends here and there. And what we try to do is demonstrate, first identify a kind of a moonshot idea within the function. So to move the function along in sort of leaps versus those incremental steps, if you will. So choose the significant pain point, and then go do research and try to establish an experiment, basically, to test the wild and crazy ideas to move that particular function forward. And as I mentioned in P&O, or HR, the HR function for Novartis, we chose talent acquisition as our first area of play because, as I said, there's so much opportunity there. And Novartis as an organization is, as many of you might be doing, is kind of experiencing an evolution, right? Moving from what amounts to pretty manual processes and really challenges that we throw human resources at to solve, to adopting more digital or data-based solutions. And that's where we started. And so we move in these, so we're a very small team. We are comprised of internals and these external partners. And the other thing I should mention is that what's in it for the partners is that if we create something together, so the third members, the representatives from the vendor partner companies that work with us directly, what's in it for their companies is that if we create something, they own the IP and we get sort of first use free of charge. So we also eat our own dog food, if you will, by using the technology that we create together. So that's how the X team works. As I said, we're in our 3rd year of life. We've had a lot of challenges and a lot of learnings along the way, not the least of which is organizational resistance or immune response, if you will. So happy to also talk a little bit about that or do that offline if anybody's interested to hear how it's going in this model. But maybe we get back to the talent alpha aspect of the presentation, because that's the fun stuff.
I think the Novartis aspect is extremely interesting as well, because to me, your team was like a startup within a large organization, right? And the way you approach things was very nimble and agile. What I thought was very clever is that you also kind of expanded your network by tapping and inviting some startups such as Talent Alpha to help you out, right? And for us being a young organization, this is also a tremendous opportunity to showcase and apply some of our crazy ideas, right, in the real world. So it was mutually beneficial for everyone involved. So we have some questions in the chat. I think it's the right moment where we could take some of that. Number one is, are you finding you're reading
I read the
through
last questions about using the AI to choose team members.
Did that happen? Is this happening now? Are you still recruiting? Let's start with that one.
I think we're constantly recruiting, right? And actually, the honest answer is no. And part of the reason is that we are recruiting on such a small scale into X. But it is a really interesting idea. Actually, no, we just rolled up our sleeves, and as I said, we did a hackathon. We did a kind of a live event where we had about 160 people apply for that first round of creator roles, and we ran a hackathon event and then observed and interacted with all of the talent while they were problem solving. Actually, they were planning together. So it was an interesting approach. It was a one-shot event. Actually, we just did the hackathon and then we chose our finalists. So we were experimenting with our own process, but we didn't use the TA tool, unfortunately.
So what's the visibility of the group within the organization? Like, is X now kind of a known term within the Novartis GBS, or you guys still need to kind of wave the flag and say, hey, we are the cool startup-y guys within Novartis, or you already have a brand?
Yes and yes are the answers.
Cool.
Yes, we are known to a degree, but that's always a challenge within a large and kind of monolithic organization, right? I think we're over 100,000 people just in the sort of the FTE workforce, if you will. So we have a ways to go. And you mentioned we're operating as a startup within a corporation, and that's true. That's absolutely a very clear analogy. And therein lies the challenge, right? Because not only do we have to actually do the work of X, and we don't have a lot of we just have the, now we're, I think, at 32, but back when we were working together, there were about 24 of us working together against this larger division of 10,000. Now, actually, we've had some success, and fortunately or unfortunately, our remit has extended beyond the global business services division to the entire enterprise. So now we're looking into the commercial space and into the more clinically oriented spaces. And I actually came from the early research division, NIBR, the Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research, another 6,000 person division. And I'm very interested in looking at the drug development process and the scientific processes, and observing and challenging whether there are places we can introduce moonshot improvements, if you will, or projects to test how we get that work done. So the field of play is tremendous. It's a great problem to have, again, but it also means we're stretched really thinly. So let's see what we do to meet that challenge.
Do you get budgets to execute some of that?
Oh, that's the other trick. We don't have an internal budget, right? So we have to go to the business, and that's part of our model, actually, is early on working with the vendor partners, and the ecosystem, as you mentioned, the vendor partner startup ecosystem, and the people that we run into as we do research about what's happening out there on the outer edges of HR and other technologies. And
it feels like my world as well. Constant fundraising.
Yeah. Exactly. That's right. But that's
it doesn't matter whether in a corporate or in a startup. You constantly need to look for budgets.
Yes. Exactly.
So what about your KPIs? So how do you guys know you're successful, and what is the expectation of the organization, and how do you measure that internally? How do you know you're moving forward in the right direction?
The big KPI, or the one shared team goal, is really net present value, right? So we have a financial target that we aim for over a 5-year span for some kind of some aggregation of savings, right? And so that's the one thing that we all share as a team. That's one of our operating principles, actually, is that it's all one team. We don't recognize individual performance, but we are comprised of, as you might guess by now, a number of smaller project teams. So we constantly have a bunch of things cooking, both that have very large targets, like one of our first targets, also related to people and organization, or HR, was the gig economy. How do we enable that in an effective way within Novartis? You actually, Talent Alpha played a role in that early experiment as well, and that target was about 50 million over 5 years. So that's the shared goal. And then within the projects, that's actually part of our early exploration and due diligence, if you will, is to identify what are the right KPIs. Is it savings, or is it possibly revenue generation, or is it reduced footprint, or is it in our sustainability kind of vertical, if you will? There are different kinds of KPIs, right, where we're adding to and we're enabling the Novartis pledge to the environment that we published.
So one of the questions from the audience is, how do you entertain ideas coming from outside of your group, right? So how do you drive, the pipeline of ideas?
Right. So that's actually a constant challenge. At first, it was rather easy, lots of low-hanging fruit. Talent acquisition was one of those, right? Actually, not easy problems to solve necessarily, but lots of problems to identify and opportunities to experiment. So it I would say was a combination, especially in the early days, of ideas that we had. Remember, 2/3 of the team was staffed from inside, so we all were users and consumers, right, of these services. And so we had our own experiences to draw on. And then another aspect of our roles, especially in the disruptor roles, the more senior roles, if you will, is to stay connected to the domains and the businesses, and to have those ongoing conversations, to ideate with them even around what were their most painful challenges, or what were their big crazy ideas that individuals or teams might have about how to advance the work and do it, as I said, in leaps rather than steps. So it's that business connection. And then I would say a third aspect of it is we have to stay in touch with what's going on in the market. So what are other companies doing? What are forerunners doing? What's happening in other industries, actually, that might be applicable to even the storied industry of pharma? So it's really a combination of all those influences. And then sometimes it's just a wild and crazy individual idea that bubbles up.
Do you participate in like startup competitions or conferences to kind of stay up to date on where the market is heading?
Yes, definitely. We're trying to get, and that's, maybe one of the drivers behind this conversation also, is we don't suffer from more information, right, and more connections. So we try to get out into the world in a variety of ways, and meet people and talk about what's going on. As I said, get ideas, share challenges. Like one of the things that I'm exploring right now is in the early drug development process. Again, this is my kind of passion area. I'm not a scientist though. And so I've been working a bit with a couple of scientists that were in my client groups, and we're talking about connected data systems in early drug discovery. And actually we've made a connection to our friends across the river in Basel, who another pharma company, and they experience the same challenges when we're talking about data systems. And so we've started a conversation with them. So we're kind of all in this together on some level. Yes, we're competing, but also we have these very tough challenges to solve. So it also provides a incentive and a platform to connect with others who are looking to do similar work.
And for startups, do you now have like a process that the startup can apply to be a partner of the X team, or it's more you kind of being out in the market and building those relationships and picking the relevant ones?
I wish I could say that was a well-developed channel. That would be brilliant. And maybe that's one of the things we need to work on in 2022 is really opening that pipe and easing the passage and easing the connection. But right now it's still a bit of the heavy lifting to get connected. And then while we're doing all of that, kind of looking inside out, we're also observing our own kind of onboarding processes, if you will. That we haven't managed to fast track any of the kind of interior processes that we have to go through to actually work with other people, right? The other vendors, other companies. And so that's something that we're trying to do at the same time. So a lot of kind of juggling of priorities, right? Getting out there, getting to the good ideas, meeting the right people. But then once we have met some of the right people, getting actually them surviving our internal processes so that we can work together. It's all happening at the same time. Fascinating.
There are some questions from earlier on about the human cloud, so let me tackle these. Well, the first one was whether we are finding that organizations are optimizing for their current talent pools on top of the new talent acquisition, and we do see that. And the way they are doing that is by implementing internal talent marketplaces. So this is a fairly new category of solutions in the HR tech scene. where companies are trying to build, especially in the size of Novartis and very large companies, internal talent marketplaces. What we find talking to our clients is that many organizations don't have a very good visibility into the talent pool that they currently have on board, right? So there's quite a bit of data collected in the recruitment process, but once you kind of get on the payroll, right, like that data retires, gets old, and never gets really refreshed, right? So this is the gap that we see many organizations trying to close right now. So how do we keep that data current so we know really not only what people are working on, but also what they're capable of, but more importantly, where they would like themselves to see evolve, right? So what skills they would like to acquire in the future. So my bet is that this is going to continue to be a big trend, building really those internal talent marketplaces. And as a next step of evolution, I actually think that the internal and external talent marketplaces would be combined, right? So if you're the CHRO, ideally you'd like to be able to query the total talent pool and say, okay, for that particular job, you need to rent 20 days of Przemek, right, who's in Talent Alpha, but for that assignment, Kristina would be the best fit. Is this something that you guys are also thinking about within Novartis, Chris?
Definitely. And again, this is not a nut that we have cracked yet, but we're heading in that direction. I'm really hopeful, because what you just said is kind of, I mean, in part, it's the holy grail somehow of talent acquisition.
Yeah,
right?
I think this is still a few years away, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think but it's so powerful, right? Having that information and that current information about what's available in the market, inside and outside of the organization, and then somehow softening the boundaries so that we can tap into what we need when we need it and where we need it, and then move on, right? We're experiencing this shift, right? That I think will only continue and come into sharper focus around workforce assets, if you will, human capital, human resource, right? Mm-hmm. And we have to. I think we are, much like I said, we are as Novartis, right? Kind of one foot in the present or the past, and one foot in the future. We are in human resources or people and organization as well, right? We're moving forward, but we're also being dragged forward a little bit, and that's yeah.
There was one about the tech talent and whether there is more that drives them than just higher salaries. And I wish I could say there is, because there used to be, right? When I was prior to the pandemic, I would probably give you the answer that salary is on the top 5 list, but probably not the number 1, because it was the company culture and the type of work you were doing, the team members that you were working with. I feel like a lot of that EVP, employee value proposition, has now kind of evolved away, right? In the remote world, it doesn't really, people don't pay that much attention to company culture. Unfortunately, it's a fast-paced moving market. The tenure of the IT talent is getting shorter and shorter. And many of those individuals, and it's not all, they're becoming super transactional, right? There is a job to be done. If they like the technology stack, they know they'll get paid. If someone will pay more, and it's not uncommon to see 20, 30, 50% increases in salaries, they will have very little sentiment and to move on to the next assignment. And unfortunately, this is the reality we are living in. I feel like the market is in a bit of a gold rush, unfortunately, right? And honestly, I don't know if there is and when this stops, right? Because what is really happening is this big rebalancing. The budgets are set. I also feel that the premise of the CIO, I think, is going to change slightly, because it used to be that the CIO was looking for cost savings, right? Technology was supposed to drive savings. Their budgets and KPIs were set around how much they can actually save for the company. My take is that because of that talent shortage, is going to change actually to be able to execute the strategy to support the business going forward, right? Because if your KPI is to drive the cost of talent down, you will simply not find that talent. You at some point, and we see that with clients, they say like, okay, we'll pay any price just to get the job done. Yes, we'll pay any price. If you can have a team tomorrow, we can pay double to what we used to pay prior to the pandemic.
But maybe that's not a bad thing, Przemek, because maybe that's just, maybe it's I know it's a little bit painful. I'm not, and don't get me wrong, because we don't have limitless budgets at Novartis either, but it's, I think what we're seeing is this is one of the growing pains, right, of these changes that are going to resurface how we think about work and workforce and resources, and maybe even sort of what we value and what we try to get done as organizations. Maybe I think this is a growing.
I think you're right. I mean, there's something's got to push that change, right? And the lack of talent, will open up first the organizations for new models, right? A lot of the compliance issues that we used to deal with before, and when you heard that that person needs to be in the office, they need to work on the company computer, right? They need to be in that country. Many companies are just letting that go now, right? Because we all used to get used to it. Also, we built policies and procedures on how to live in this new reality. So I think there is a lot to that. From the macro perspective, again, with a huge demand and companies that actually have big budgets, right? I think Meta, former Facebook, they announced they want to open up 10,000 IT jobs in EU, right? 10,000, and they have all money in the world to pay these engineers, right? Like eventually, I actually think they can do that, right? Because they have so deep pockets, right? And the reason being is that with a limited supply, the market will be trying to find equilibrium by lifting the price, right? This is the pure kind of economics theory, and this is what we are experiencing here as well. The next one was on the players within the human cloud market. This is interesting, and I would probably send you to the staffing industry analysts, the SIA reports, where they on regular basis they covered the talent platforms landscape. So in the latest report, they say a few things. First of all, that the market is expected to grow, and I think they are forecasting 25% CAGR over the next few years, and it's getting into billions of dollars. But second of all, they have that list of the different players across different categories of staffing platforms. And that list grows every year. I think last year had like 400 platforms. So there is plenty to choose, right? But there are some established players, the big brands that many of you probably recognize, TopTal, Upwork, Freelancer, Fiverr. Hopefully you know Talent Alpha as well by now. But what they also predict, and I agree, is that the next stage of that evolution will be aggregators of the talent platforms, right? I doubt companies like Novartis would be willing to work with 50 platforms at the same time. They just want to have one interface, right? And be able to access that talent pool. And the human cloud industry hasn't figured that out yet. Like, we know each other, we know we exist, we bump into each other at clients, but there are no kind of interoperability standards established on the market yet. The market is fairly young. I think some of the oldest companies out there are only 10 years old. So there is still place to grow. I'm trying to see if we missed any questions.
Prez, I think Matthias has a question. He says, how do you verify and account for the skills capabilities of the candidates using your AI platform?
All right, yeah, so we have a couple of features within the platform that allows us to do that. A big chunk of that is actually on self-reporting. So we are capable of analyzing a CV or a LinkedIn profile and driving that across our taxonomy engine and identify technical skills that are mentioned in those documents. And then we are asking the candidates to self-assess themselves on how well they believe they've mastered that given skill. And you can claim like, okay, to what extent is this really justifying whether they have that capability or not? But we take it a step further, which is we then have a module that allow us to calibrate these answers, right? So if I tell the system that Python language is something that I know, and I know it on the expert level, we have a database of questions that allow us to actually test and verify that knowledge to really see whether this candidate, how honest or how well calibrated was he giving these answers. In my experience, there isn't a silver bullet of validating those capabilities, right? Many companies are trying different approaches. Some go super heavy on actually technical interviews and human involvement, and they have their own tools about it, which is very labor and cost intensive. Others are going into skills testing platforms, and there are a number of them where you can develop your test, and they will test the quality of the code and whether there was a test coverage, automated test coverage, and we'll give you some of the kind of core ways to measure software development. This was gaining momentum in the pandemic. I would say that by now the market is getting a bit tired of asking candidates to do these tests, because doing a test like that requires an hour or 90 minutes of a candidate. And in this hot market, they will just move to the next job that is not asking them to do that, right? They want to know if you need them. I've heard, actually, this is how extreme the market gets. I've heard companies offering pay to do the programming test in the recruitment process. So yeah, this is where the market is heading. Are there any other that we've missed? Any other questions?
Przemek, this is Matthias. One more question along those lines is, you did explain the technical, the skills, if you will, how do you go about, verifying them, and thank you, that was very helpful. But how do you account for the behavior, for the, when it comes over to an employee, it's not only the technical skills, but how do they fit into the organization? What kind of methods you can apply to predict that, right? I mean, the soft skills do become quite important. Are they team players? Are they committed? I mean, what their soft skills, if you will, are.
Right. So what we've done, and this is part of our solution, we did implement a number of psychological tools which are scientifically proven to be reliable and objective, such as Big 5 personality traits, right? So we can draw the map across those different dimensions and variables in that model. We also have another tool that is called CBQ, the Creative Behavior Questionnaire. So this one allows you to determine whether one is more of a creative or a heuristic thinker, whether they are more conformist or non-conformist. So you can really paint a bit more detailed picture of that individual. We haven't cracked all of it just yet. We have a team of cognitive psychologists on board who are constantly looking into that field of research to what tools have been developed and tested specifically on the IT community, because that's what makes these models relevant. And if we find something that is interesting and validated, we are trying to bring it into the tool.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Przemek.
So we are at the hour, so
Yep,
I think, John, now it's back to you.
Yeah, Prez, thank you. Gosh, what wonderful discussion. Appreciate you, Kristina, and taking time today, and everyone. We promised a few things for everybody: a PDF version of the PowerPoint, a link to our events page, the A3 work resolution report, and kind of a YouTube recording of this event. So expect those things out soon. Thanks, everyone. Be looking for more information on our new website. We wish you all the best. And again, Prez and Kristina, thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Great value.
Thanks, everyone. It was our privilege. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.